Mr. President, Dr. Biden, welcome to Canada in the House of Commons. Monsieur le Premier ministre, Monsieur le Président Fury, Mesdames et Messieurs les chefs de parti, Mesdames et Messieurs les parlementaires, Vos Excellences, chers invités, permettez-moi de vous souhaiter la bienvenue à cet événement extraordinaire. On behalf of my colleagues, we are honored by your visit. As we come together under one roof, we take a moment to celebrate the friendship and the shared values of our countries. We celebrate our people and the history of cooperation between Canada and the United States. A prime example of this cooperation can be seen in my hometown, North Bay, in the riding of Nipissing-Temiskaming, where Canadian and American military personnel work side by side at NORAD to ensure our safety by patrolling the skies of North America. NORAD is proof that when Canadians and Americans venture to undertake a mission together, we accomplish great things, but more importantly, our great friendship grows. This visit reminds us all that we must never take our friendship, this cooperation, these shared values for granted. Permettez-moi maintenant d'inviter le très honorable Premier ministre de prendre la parole. Monsieur le Premier ministre.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today, we welcome to our Parliament the 46th President of the United States of America, President Joseph R. Biden, Jr. Mr. President, you are a true friend to Canada, and that matters more than ever in this consequential moment. Make no mistake, these are serious times. When the consequences of a warming planet are intersecting with the aftermath of a global pandemic, when an unjustifiable war in Europe has shocked the conscience of the world and exposed the vulnerability of energy markets and supply chains, when families are facing the pressures of inflation and struggling with affordability, when citizens around the world feel anxious about their future and their kids' futures. Mr. President, as it should be, our two nations stand united in this moment, finding solutions side by side. On va continuer de travailler ensemble pour créer des emplois, bâtir des économies et des sociétés plus saines et plus durables. L'économie, l'environnement et la sécurité sont interreliés. Et ça n'a jamais été aussi clair. It has never been more clear that everything is interwoven. Economic policy is climate policy, is security policy. People need us to think strategically and act with urgency. And that is exactly what brings us together today. Mr. President, throughout our history, Canada and the United States, as friends and allies, have faced many challenges together. Pandemics, recessions, wars. Here in this House in September 1939, members of Parliament debated going to war. A few years later, Canadian and American soldiers were fighting against fascism shoulder to shoulder. There are battlefields around the world where our soldiers lie in cemeteries, shoulder to shoulder. War has now returned to Europe. As you well know, Mr. President, Canada will continue to stand strong with Ukraine, with whatever it Together, both of us are partners that Ukraine and the world can count on. Since Putin launched his brutal invasion, like you, Canada has provided significant military support, in our case, artillery, ammunition, armor, and tanks. From 2015 to today, with Operation Unifier, the Canadian Armed Forces train the brave members of the Ukrainian military, about 35,000 of them and counting. With partners and allies, we've both used sanctions and punitive economic measures to continue to deplete the Kremlin's war chest. After a terrifying spring, summer and fall, and an exhausting winter, Ukraine still stands. Il y a un an, notre ami, le président Zelensky, s'est adressé à cette Chambre pour nous remercier de l'avoir soutenu dès le début. Aujourd'hui, Monsieur le Président, ensemble, on réitère notre message pour le président Zelensky et pour les Ukrainiens. On reste à vos côtés. C'est en défendant les démocraties et l'ordre international fondé sur des règles qu'on va assurer la sécurité des Canadiens et des Américains. Vladimir Poutine a sous-estimé la détermination de l'Europe et des alliés de l'OTAN. Il a sous-estimé la force et le courage des Ukrainiens et leur volonté de défendre leur langue, leur culture, leur patrie. Mr. President, today I want to introduce you to Natalia, who I met just last week. Natalia arrived in Canada from Ukraine more than 10 years ago. Give us a wave, Natalia. Yes, She arrived in Canada from Ukraine more than 10 years ago. She's safe here with her family, but she still has a lot of loved ones in Ukraine. Every time she hangs up after speaking with a cousin or a friend, she feels a twinge in her heart, wondering if this conversation might be their last. Mr. President, we cannot and will not let Natalia's loved ones down. The Ukrainian people are counting on us. We must stand shoulder to shoulder with Ukraine with as much as it takes, as long as it takes. But I bring up Natalia now not just because of what's happening over in Ukraine as we speak, but also because she's key to what we're building here today and tomorrow. Vous savez, j'ai rencontré Natalia en Nouvelle-Écosse la semaine passée, où elle vit actuellement près de Bridgewater, une petite ville de 9000 personnes. Depuis plus de 50 ans, l'usine de pneus Michelin à Bridgewater est une des plus performantes du monde. C'est grâce à la force des travailleurs que Michelin vient d'annoncer des investissements majeurs pour moderniser ses installations afin de répondre à la demande croissante de véhicules électriques. De bons emplois stables, comme ceux qu'on trouve dans cette usine, comptent vraiment pour Natalia et sa famille. Ils comptent aussi pour nos petites et grandes communautés. When I was there in Nova Scotia meeting with Natalia and others, I met third-generation tire workers at that Michelin plant. And because of the work that we're doing together and investments we're making for the future, that community will have jobs for generations more to come. And that doesn't just impact them in Bridgewater. It means there will continue to be vans delivering food to grocery stores in California and trucks delivering medical supplies to hospitals in Pennsylvania that roll on tires made in Nova Scotia, as it should be. Mr. President, in 1987, Ronald Reagan addressed this House in a final big push towards the first Canada-US Free Trade Agreement. He pointed out that the US-Canadian border was a meeting place rather than a dividing line. More than 30 years later, our border is no longer just the place where we meet each other. It's the place where we will meet the moment. It's a place where we will meet the future. A future not only with good jobs, but good, stable careers for generations to come. See, we're also joined today by steel workers from Dofasco in Hamilton. One of them is Neil. Why don't you stand up, Neil? You see, Neil's mother worked at Dofasco in the 70s. His father worked in the finishing steel area for 37 years. Now, with the investments we've made to help Dofasco phase out coal-fired steelmaking in favor of electric arc, Neil's kids and grandkids and great-grandkids will be able to choose careers making the clean steel the world needs to build EVs, buildings, and bridges. Clean steel will be the backbone for manufacturing in the future, and workers like Neil, from generations past to generations future, will continue to be at the heart of the economy we're building for the middle class. See, economic policy is climate policy, is security policy. With growing competition, including from an increasingly assertive China, there's no doubt why it matters that we turn to each other now to build up a North American market on everything from semiconductors to solar panel batteries. Mr. President, with the Inflation Reduction Act, you're creating the jobs of today and tomorrow for the middle class in America. And this also means more clients for Canadian critical minerals processors, for our clean energy innovators, for our integrated auto workers, for our farmers, growers and producers, and so many others. It's an example of how we can make progress at home and as partners. Pour soutenir les bons emplois de l'économie de demain, le Canada a l'un des réseaux électriques les plus propres au monde. Environ 83% de notre électricité est déjà carboneutre et on est en voie d'atteindre 100% d'ici 2035. Pour y parvenir, on travaille avec les communautés locales, y compris pour des projets dirigés par les Autochtones partout au pays, que ce soit pour des panneaux solaires ou des turbines éoliennes. Et toutes nos exportations d'électricité propre sont destinées aux États-Unis. À travers le monde, on doit tous accélérer notre transition vers les énergies renouvelables. Cette semaine, le groupe d'experts des Nations Unies sur l'évolution du climat a publié un nouveau rapport qui indique que notre planète va atteindre un seuil critique en matière de réchauffement climatique au cours de la prochaine décennie. Ça veut dire plus de vagues de chaleur, plus de sécheresse, inondations et plus d'espèces en péril. When I think of families I met on the Atlantic coast last fall who saw their houses being torn to pieces by Hurricane Fiona. When I think of the people of Lytton, BC, whose town burned because of a wildfire during a record-breaking heat wave. I know that responsible leadership means doing more to fight climate change, more to protect families. Climate policy is economic policy, is security policy. En tant que dirigeant, notre priorité est d'assurer la sécurité des gens. Non seulement on doit continuer notre travail, mais on doit en faire plus et plus rapidement. Et je sais que vous êtes d'accord, Monsieur le Président. Je me souviens de la discussion qu'on a eue en 2016, vous et moi, sur la lutte contre les changements climatiques lorsque vous étiez en visite au Canada en tant que vice-président. Vous aviez rencontré les premiers ministres des provinces et des territoires et les dirigeants autochtones. Et ce même jour, pendant la réunion des premiers ministres, notre gouvernement a adopté le cadre pan-canadien sur la croissance propre et les changements climatiques, dont la base était de mettre un prix sur la pollution à l'échelle du pays. Je suis donc très heureux de vous accueillir à nouveau aujourd'hui, sachant que la protection de l'environnement demeure l'une de vos priorités principales. Mr. President, what makes this such a moment of consequence is that our world, our way of living, is facing multiple threats at the same time. That's why security policy is climate policy, is economic policy. Because climate change, inflation, war, energy shortages, but also foreign interference, misinformation and disinformation, and constant attacks on our values and institutions all compound. Democracies like ours, just like democracies around the world, didn't happen by accident and won't continue without effort. On doit être là, l'un pour l'autre. On doit continuer de s'opposer aux menaces autoritaires chez nous comme à l'étranger, et continuer de défendre ce qui est juste. Ce n'est pas le moment de faire des compromis sur nos valeurs. This is not a moment to compromise on our values. This is a moment to double down on them. We must continue to show resilience, perseverance, and strength. Resilience, perseverance, and strength. These are words that perfectly describe two men who are here with us today, Michael Kovrig and Michael Spavor. Mr. President, when the plane transporting the two Michaels landed on Canadian soil after more than 1,000 days of arbitrary detention in China, Canadians proved that resilience, perseverance, and strength are more than just lofty ideals. They're commitments that drive our actions and shape our character. Canada got the two Michaels home, and we did it the right way, not just by respecting the rule of law, but by anchoring ourselves to it. When under great pressure to undermine our commitment to our agreements and treaties and to the rule of law, we did not capitulate. We did not abandon our values. We doubled down, and we rallied our allies against arbitrary detention, and through that, with your support and your leadership, Mr. President, the rule of law prevailed and the money came home. Avec nos alliés et nos partenaires, les Canadiens et les Américains doivent rester une source d'inspiration pour le reste du monde, mais surtout, on doit poursuivre notre travail. Chaque jour, on doit faire les efforts nécessaires pour bâtir un avenir meilleur pour les gens comme Neil et Natalia et pour leurs enfants et leurs petits-enfants. We must and we will meet this moment. Mr. President, in your most recent powerful State of the Union, you encouraged the American people to stay optimistic, hopeful, and forward-looking. Well, this is a vision that Canadians share too. So let's keep working hard, and together, let's continue to build a better future for our people. Welcome to Canada, my friend. Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States of America, Joe Biden.
Good afternoon. Thank you. Good afternoon. Bonjour, Canada. I must tell you, I took 4 years of French in school. First time I attempted to make a speech in French, I was laughed at. So that's as good as I can get right now. But seriously, thank you very, very much. Speaker of the House of Commons, Speaker of the Senate, members of the Parliament, thank you for the very kind welcome for my wife and I. Prime Minister Trudeau, you were my first meeting with a foreign leader just 1 month after my presidency during the hardest days of COVID-19. We had to make a visit virtual, but since then, we've been all over the world taking on some of the toughest issues our nations have faced in a very long time. I want to thank you for your partnership and for your personal friendship. I thank you very much. Jill and I are grateful for the hospitality you and Sophie have shown us. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm honored to have the opportunity to uphold a tradition carried out by so many of my predecessors in addressing the hallowed halls of the Canadian democracy, although this is a different hall. You've done a hell of a job here. This is really beautiful. It's really very beautiful. This is a custom that speaks to the closeness of our relationship. Americans and Canadians are two people, two countries, in my view, sharing one heart. It's a personal connection. No two nations on earth are bound by such close ties, friendship, family, commerce, and culture. Our labor unions cross borders. So do our sports leagues. Baseball, basketball, hockey. Listen to this, hockey. I have to say, I like your teams except the Leafs. I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why. They beat the Flyers back in January. That's why. And if I didn't see that, I married a Philly girl. If I didn't say that, I'd be sleeping alone, fellas. I like you, but not that much. To take a partnership between Canada and the United States as a given. And but when you stop and think about it, it's really a wonder. 5,552-mile-long border, more than 8,800 kilometers, defined by peaceful commerce, trading relationships that measure more than $2.5 billion a day. Every day, hundreds of thousands of people cross the borders going in north and south. Just to visit, knowing they'll find a warm welcome on the other side of the border. Americans love Canadians, and that's not hyperbole. It's a data-driven fact. Earlier this week, the Gallup poll did a new poll showing American opinions on different countries in the world. This is a fact. Canada ranked at the very top. 88% favorable rating among Americans. Up from 87 the year before. I take credit for that 1 point. I suspect every politician in this room would do a hell of a lot to get those kind of numbers. But there's a reason for it. The same fundamental aspirations reverberate across both our nations, from the Atlantic to the Pacific, to live in freedom, not just freedom with dignity, to relentlessly pursue the possibilities of tomorrow, to leave our children and our grandchildren a future that's better because of our efforts, the people in this room and a similar room in the United States. President Kennedy said, and when he spoke here in 1961, and I quote, he said, "Ours is the unity of equal and independent nations, co-tenants of the same continent, heirs of the same legacy, and fully sovereign associates in the same historic endeavor, to preserve freedom for ourselves and for all who wish it, Through more than a century of that historic endeavor, Canada and the United States have had each other's backs. In war and in peace, we have been the stronghold of liberty, safeguard for the fundamental freedoms that give us our lives, literally give our lives meaning. We have gladly stepped into the responsibilities of global leadership because we understand all that is at risk for Canadians and Americans alike when freedom is under attack anywhere in the world. Today, our destinies are intertwined and they're inseparable, not because of the inevitability of geography, but because it's a choice we've made again and again. The United States chooses to link our future with Canada because we know that we'll find no better partner. And I mean this from the bottom of my heart. No more reliable ally, no more steady friend. And today I say to you and to all the people of Canada that you will always, always be able to count on the United States of America. I guarantee it. Together, we have built a partnership that is an incredible advantage to both our nations. That doesn't mean we never disagree, as any two countries will do from time to time. But when we disagree, we solve our differences in friendship and in goodwill because we both understand our interests are fundamentally aligned. As we stand at this inflection point in history, I had a professor who once explained an inflection point as you're going down the highway at 60 miles an hour and you rapidly turn in one direction 5 degrees. You never get back on the same path again. But you're on a different course where the decisions we make in the coming years will determine the course of our world for decades to come. It happens every 5 or 6 generations, but we're at that point. Nothing gives me greater confidence in the future than knowing Canada and the United States stand together still. Today, I'd like to speak a little bit about the future, if I may. A future that's ours to seize. You know, I get criticized at home sometimes for saying that I used to always, President Obama used to always kid me because I'd always say to him in our private meetings, a country's never more optimistic than its president or its leaders. Well, I have never been more optimistic in my life about the prospects. I really mean this from the bottom of my heart. We are so well positioned. The future built around our shared responsibilities, prosperity, security, shared values. First, it's a future built on shared prosperity, where Canada and the United States continue to anchor the most competitive, prosperous, and resilient economic region in the world. That's a fact. That's just a fact. where our supply chains are secure and reliable from end to end, because we're creating the value at every step right here in North America. We're mining critical minerals, to manufacturing, packaging the most advanced semiconductors in the world, to producing electric vehicles and clean energy technology together. A future where we understand that economic success is not in conflict with the rights and dignity of workers or meeting our responsibilities addressing the climate crisis, but rather those things depend on us doing that. Depend on us doing that. Factually. Since becoming president, I've been laser focused on rebuilding the U.S. economy from the bottom up and the middle out. Not a whole lot trickled down from the top down on my dad's kitchen table. And by the way, when the middle class does well, the wealthy do very well. No one gets hurt. The United States made historic, and to the chagrin of some of our critics in the press, bipartisan investments in infrastructure, innovation that are already bringing together and delivering concrete benefits to the American people. And we, as we implement these legislative achievements, there are enormous opportunities for Canada and the United States to work even closer together to create good paying jobs in both our countries. The Inflation Reduction Act, which I admit wasn't bipartisan, but nonetheless, all of a sudden I'm finding we have more adherence, represents the single largest commitment in tackling climate in our history. As a matter of fact, the single largest investment in all of human history. And it's going to spur clean energy investments all over the world. And explicitly includes tax credits for electric vehicles assembled in Canada, recognizing there's a simple reason. Recognizing how interconnected our auto industries are and our workers are. I am the most pro-union president America's ever had. No. And I speak to a hell of a lot of Canadian union members. Look, this is a model for future cooperation, with both our nations investing at home to increase the strength of our industrial bases, making sure the products manufactured in North America are not only manufactured, but they're the best in the world. We're going to amplify our shared commitment, climate action, while growing our economies. If I could just stop for just a second and say, when I announced for president, I was always known as one of those kind of green Democrats, and Republicans used to be the same in my place. Well, guess what? I didn't announce my environmental plan. And I was getting beat up. Why is Biden all of a sudden changing? Well, the reason is I brought all the unions together. I brought them into the White House, not a joke, because they all said we're going to lose our jobs. And I pointed out, guess what? Every single solitary initiative required to deal with the environment creates union jobs, creates thousands of jobs, thousands of jobs. For example, I met with the IBEW and pointed out we're going to build 5,500 electric charging stations. Guess who builds them? Union workers. So look, we're coordinating the standard for new electric vehicles and charging stations, so that Americans and Canadians can continue to easily cross the border without ever hitting a snag in their American or Canadian-built automobiles, zero-emission vehicles. Moreover, we're going to build batteries and technologies that go into those vehicles together. We've learned the hard way during the pandemic that when we rely on just-in-time supply chains that circle the globe, there are significant vulnerabilities to disruptions and delays. And it drives up cost here at home, both Canada and the United States. But there's a better way. Our nations are blessed with incredible natural resources. Canada in particular has large quantities of critical minerals that are essential for our clean energy future, for the world's clean energy future. And I believe we have an incredible opportunity to work together so Canada and the United States can source and supply here in North America everything we need for reliable and resilient supply chains. Folks, to help make our critical mineral supply chains the envy of the world, the United States is making funding available under the Defense Production Act to incentivize American and Canadian companies to responsibly mine and process critical minerals needed for electric vehicles and stationary storage batteries. We're also building integrated supply chains for our semiconductors, a critical computer chip that I might note was invented in America, and then we lost control of it. We not only control it, we lost producing them and the power of so much of our daily lives. The IBM plant in Bromont, Quebec, is the largest semiconductor packaging and testing facility in North America. Chips made in Vermont in upstate New York are shipped to Bromont to be packaged in electronic components. But now Bromont is expanding with the support of the Canadian government. And there's going to be a lot more work to do. Thanks to the Bipartisan Chips and Science Act I signed into law last year, companies are breaking ground for new semiconductor plants across the United States, representing billions of dollars in new investments in American high-tech manufacturing. $12 billion from Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company in Arizona. $20 billion in counting for Intel in Ohio. $100 billion in New York, the single largest investment of its kind ever in the world. And chips began to roll off these new production lines in America. A lot of them are going to be coming to Canada to be packaged. And that's a lot of jobs, good paying jobs. And today I'm also making available through the Defense Production Act $50 million to incentivize more U.S. and Canadian companies to invest in packaging semiconductors and printed circuit boards. Look, that brings me to a second pillar of our future. Because of our shared prosperity is deeply connected to our shared security. In the past years have proven that Canada and the United States are not insulated from the challenges that impact the rest of the world. The world needs Canada and the United States working together with our partners around the world to rally strong and effective global action. Nowhere is that more obvious than in our united response to Russia's brutal aggression against Ukraine. We've stood together to defend sovereignty, to defend democracy, to defend freedom for ourselves and all who wish it. As I told President Zelensky, who I visited with in Kyiv last month, people all over the world are with the brave people of Ukraine. And you have to ask yourself, aren't you amazed of the personal bravery they're showing? It's incredible. It's incredible. Folks, I know there's a large Ukrainian diaspora here in Canada, not just the lovely lady we were all introduced to a moment ago, who feel the same way. Canada and the United States, together with a coalition of 50 nations we've jointly worked to put together, are making sure that Ukraine can defend itself. We're supplying air defense systems, artillery systems, ammunition, armored vehicles, tanks, and so much more. Tens of billions of dollars so far. Together with our G7 partners, we're imposing significant cost on Russia as well, denying Russia critical inputs to its war machine. We're independently holding Russia accountable for the war crimes and crimes against humanity that Russia is committing and continues to commit as I speak today. And Canada and America alike have opened their arms to Ukrainian refugees. Our people know well the high price of freedom. Our peace tower, your peace tower, stands testament to the sacrifices of more than 60,000 brave Canadians who perished in World War I, forever making this nation the champion of liberty. In the words of a Canadian poet, Lieutenant Colonel John McCree, still call to us from Flanders Field, echoing their charge through the ages. And I quote it, to you from failing hands, we throw the torch, to you to hold it high. So today, let's once more affirm that we're going to keep that torch of liberty burning brightly. and support the Ukrainian people. We will not waver. Putin was certain he would have been able to break NATO by now. He was certain of that. But guess what? His lust for land and power has failed us far. The Ukrainian people love of their country is going to prevail. In the face of President Putin's aggression against Ukraine, Canada and the United States are also making clear our commitment to our NATO allies. We'll keep our alliance strong and united. We'll defend every inch of NATO territory. An attack against one is an attack against all. And as we look forward to the 75th anniversary of NATO next year, Canada and the United States share a responsibility and a commitment to make sure NATO can deter any threat, defend against any aggression from anyone. That's the bedrock of the security of both our nations. Canada and the United States are not only partners in transatlantic security, we are Pacific nations as well. Earlier this month, we held our first U.S.-Canadian Indo-Pacific dialogue to deepen our cooperation in the vital region to promote an Indo-Pacific that is free and open and prosperous and secure. We're also an Arctic nation. We both recognize the critical importance of this region to our collective security and the interest of other nations all of a sudden in the Arctic. We're working in close coordination to steward and protect the northernmost reaches of our world. And we are American nations, deeply invested in ensuring that the Western Hemisphere is peaceful, prosperous, democratic, and secure. And that starts with our commitment to defending our people and our own sovereign territory. NORAD is the only binational military command in the world. NORAD is the only binational military command in the world. Yet another way in which our partnership is exceptional. It is an incredible symbol of the faith we have in one another and the trust we place in each other's capabilities. Soon, NORAD will have a new next-generation over-the-horizon radars to enhance our early warning capacity, upgraded undersea surveillance systems, modernized infrastructure that is necessary to host the most advanced aircraft. And I'm looking forward to continuing to work in close partnership with Canada as we deliver on these needs so that our people can continue to rest soundly, knowing NORAD is in the watch. Folks, we are. We're also coordinating closely to take on the human security challenges throughout the region. We're working in partnership with the people of Haiti to try to find ways to provide security, humanitarian assistance, and to help strengthen Haiti's stability. We're tackling the scourge of synthetic drugs that are devastating Canada and American communities, particularly our young people. Fentanyl is a killer. And almost everyone knows someone who has been affected by this, lost a child or lost a friend. Canada and the United States are working closely with our partner Mexico to attack this problem at every stage, from the precursor chemicals shipped from overseas, to the powders, to the pills, to the traffickers, moving into all of our countries. And we all know synthetic opioid epidemic has its roots around the globe, not just here. So today we're announcing a commitment to build a new global coalition of like-minded countries led by Canada and the United States to tackle this crisis. This is about public health. This is about public health. It's about public health, our economic futures, our national security. We're also working together to address the record levels of migration in the hemisphere. The Los Angeles Declaration on Migration and Protection, which the United States and Canada signed last June along with 19 other nations, represents an integrated new approach to the migration challenge, which is real. One that unites humane policies that both secure borders and support people. In the United States, we're expanding legal pathways for migration to seek safety on a humanitarian basis, while discouraging unlawful migration that feeds exploitation and human trafficking. So today, I applaud China for stepping up. I applaud Canada. You can tell what I'm thinking about China. I won't get into that yet. I applaud Canada for stepping up with similar programs, opening new legal pathways for 1,500 migrants to come to Canada from countries in the Western Hemisphere. At the same time, the United States and Canada will work together to discourage unlawful border crossings and fully implement the updated Safe Third Country Agreement. Finally, as we advance our shared prosperity and security, we must never lose sight of our shared values, because our values literally the linchpin holding everything else together. Welcoming refugees and seeking asylum seekers is a part of who Canadians and Americans are. In fact, the United States recently launched a new private sponsorship program for refugees. We call it Welcome Corps, which draws on Canadians' decades of leadership in refugee resettlement, where both countries build upon the nation-to-nation relationship with Native Americans and First Nations. We've both been influenced and strengthened by the contributions of a generation of immigrants. We believe to our core that every single person deserves to live in dignity, safety, and rise as high as their dreams can carry them. We strive to defend human rights, to advance equality and gender equality, to pursue justice, and uphold the rule of law. I want to note the outstanding work Canada has done to build a coalition of nearly 70 countries endorsing the Declaration Against Arbitrary Detention and State-to-State Relations. It's not only a statement of values. Our citizens are not bargaining chips. They're not diplomatic leverage. They're human beings with lives and families that must be respected. And I'm very glad to see the two Michaels, Michael Scarborough and Michael Covering. They're safely back to their families after more than 1,000 days. 1,000 days in detention. If my mother were here, she'd say, God bless you both. Thank you for joining us today, and thank you for having an opportunity to meet you earlier. You know, the incredible diversity that defines each of our nations is our strength. And the Prime Minister Trudeau and I know this is a belief that you and I share. We both build administrations that look like America and look like Canada. I'm very proud. That both of us have cabinets that are 50% women for the first time in history. Even if you don't agree, guys, I'd stand up. We took the lesson from you, because the bottom line is this. We make it easier for historically underrepresented, underserved communities to dream, to create, and to succeed. We build a better future for all our people. So let's continue the work. Where there are no barriers, things look better. Where there are barriers to equal opportunity, we got to tear them down. Where inequity stifles potential, where we unleash the full power of our people, where injustice holds sway, let's insist on justice being done. Those are the shared values that imbue all of our efforts, our very democracy, our vitality, and our vibrancy. You know, it's what seems that drives us all. Some places and some persons are kind of forgetting what the essence of democracy is. We have to reach, it's what allows us to reach beyond the horizon. Let me close with this. The year after President Kennedy spoke in Canada's Parliament, he delivered a famous speech at Rice University, issuing a challenge for Americans to go to the moon in a decade's time. You remember what he said? You probably do, because we had to learn it when we were in school. We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do other things not because it's easy, but because they are hard. Because that challenge is one that we are willing to accept, one that we're unwilling to postpone, and one which we will win. That speech tapped into something deep in America's character, something powerful, a belief that we can do big things. If you hold a second, just think about it. Turn on the television the last 2 years, whether it's in your country or mine. After 2 years of COVID, people began to wonder, can we still do big things? Big things. We sure in hell can. That confidence, I believe it with every fiber of my being, that confidence can make the most audacious dreams reality. In less than 7 years after Kennedy's speech, the entire world watched humanity lift its first footprints on those further shores. It inspired a generation and spurred much of the technology advancement we now enriches our daily lives. Today, our world once more stands at the cusp of breakthroughs and possibilities that have never before even been dreamt of. And Canada and the United States are leading and will continue to lead the way. In just a few days, NASA is going to announce an international team of astronauts who will crew the Artemis II mission, the first human voyage to the moon since Apollo mission ended more than 50 years ago. Will consist of 3 Americans and 1 Canadian. We choose to return to the moon together. Together we return to the moon. And from there, we look forward to Mars and to the limitless possibilities that lie beyond. And here on Earth, our children who watch that flight are going to learn the names of those new pioneers. They'll be the ones who carry us into the future we hope to build. The Artemis generation. Ladies and gentlemen, we're living in an age of possibilities. Xi Jinping asked me in the Tibetan Plateau, could I define America? And I could have said the same thing if he asked about Canada. I said, yes, one word, and I mean it, one word, possibilities. Nothing is beyond our capacity. We can do anything. We have to never forget. We must never doubt our capacity. Canada and the United States can do big things. We stand together, do them together, rise together. We're going to write the future together, I promise you. God bless you all, and may God protect our troops. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Please welcome the Right Honourable Justin Trudeau, Prime Minister of Canada, and the Honourable Joseph R. Biden Jr., President of the United States of America. Veuillez accueillir le très honorable Justin Trudeau, Premier ministre du Canada, et l'honorable Joseph R. Biden Jr., Président des États-Unis d'Amérique.
Good afternoon, everyone.
To welcome my friend, President Biden, Joe, to Canada this week. We had the opportunity to discuss the progress made under the February 2021 Roadmap for Renewed U.S.-Canada Partnership, a plan our countries put forward a month after the President was sworn in. Aujourd'hui, avec le Président.
Today, with President Biden, we've made progress on several important files, and I'd like to mention some of our common priorities. Growing the middle class, strengthening the economy, making life more affordable for people, fighting climate change, and protecting the environment, protecting our citizens and our values.
This time, with all the challenges we face, we're doubling down on our partnership and on our friendship. As I said earlier today, economic policy, climate policy, and security policy aren't just connected, they're one and the same. Both the President and I agree on this, and that's why we launched a joint energy transformation task force that will accelerate our work on clean energy and clean tech. This will include securing and strengthening electric vehicle and critical mineral supply chains and other areas to advance our collective energy security. Of course, an integrated approach means creating good middle-class jobs for workers on both sides of the border, and it will make our collective economic growth stronger and more resilient. Securing and developing critical minerals supply chains is essential to making things like batteries, computers, phones, and semiconductors. Le Canada et les États-Unis ont convenu de mettre
Canada and the United States have agreed to put in force a system for building semiconductors, and so I'd like to announce today that we have signed an agreement with IBM to extend the ability and capacity for the installations in Bromont, Quebec, to develop new capacity. Demand is on the rise, as is competition. Canada's investment in semiconductors, which will be up to $250 million, will make it possible to enhance the competitivity of the North American economy, create jobs for the middle class, and to draw on Canadian talent in addition to reducing pollution.
In addition to cutting pollution and fighting climate change, the President and I also worked on protecting more nature as well. Canada and the U.S. share the longest land border in the world. We share 3 oceans and the Great Lakes. The Great Lakes are a source of drinking water for 40 million people, and this shared resource needs to be protected. This is why Canada will make a major new investment of $420 million to continue safeguarding the Great Lakes for generations to come. Whether it's on protecting our shared waters, including in the Arctic, conserving biodiversity, or building strong net zero economies, Canada and the U.S. will continue to work together as partners. We'll also continue to work together as partners to keep our people safe. Keeping people safe also includes keeping asylum seekers safe, keeping our borders secure, and keeping our immigration system strong. Both of our countries believe in safe, fair, and orderly migration, refugee protection, and border security. This is why we will now apply the Safe Third Country Agreement to asylum seekers who cross between official points of entry. After midnight tonight, police and border officers will enforce the agreement and return irregular border crossers to the closest port of entry with the United States. Lorsque l'accord sera mis en œuvre, à partir
When the agreement comes into force, as of midnight tonight, border officers will return people crossing the border to the closest Canada-U.S. border crossing. Our teams have worked hard to achieve this agreement. All of the work will make it possible to deter irregular immigration at our borders, while at the same time we increase regular migration and immigration.
Is always our top priority. Last year I had the opportunity to visit NORAD personnel in Colorado. NORAD plays a central role in detecting, deterring, and defending against aerospace threats to our shared continent. NORAD has protected North America for over 60 years, and we're continuing our work to meet the evolving security challenges we face today. Canada is making major investments to modernize surveillance systems. And on top of that, we will invest to modernize and build new infrastructure to support the arrival of our 88 new F-35 fighter jets so that, most importantly, we can support our men and women in uniform who keep us safe. This bolsters Canada's defense abilities for the coming decades. Of course, protecting our countries also means continuing our work to make our borders more secure and keep people safe. The opioid overdose crisis is having devastating consequences in our communities. We're going to disrupt the cross-border movement of chemicals used in the illegal production of fentanyl. Canada and the United States will build a global coalition against synthetic drugs. We must stop the traffic of synthetic opioids while at the same time focusing on a public health response. If we want to keep Canadians and Americans safe at home, we have to continue defending our values around the world. Values like democracy, the rule of law, and respect for the international rules-based order. Today, we reaffirmed our steadfast support for the Ukrainian people as they defend themselves against Putin's brutal, barbaric invasion.
We also talked about other parts of the world that are experiencing difficulties, like Haiti. As I said, Canada will keep Haiti in the heart of the solution for resolving this crisis. Today, I'm announcing that Canada will invest an additional $100 million to provide better police support to the National Police Force in Haiti. We will also impose additional sanctions on 2 other members of the Haitian elite who are benefiting from insecurity and violence. We are determined to increase international support for Haiti, including through humanitarian assistance. President Biden and I had very productive meetings. As I said a little earlier, our economic measures are also climate measures, security measures. The President recognizes the importance of acting on all of these fronts.
Last time we stood together in this very room, you were the outgoing Vice President, and we were embarking upon some challenging times in our relationship as a country, as 2 friends and countries. I have to say, through our conversations back then, through the work we've been able to do over these past 2 years, it has truly been an honor to be able to work with you for the benefit of Canadians and Americans, but also to continue to have a positive impact on the world in a very uncertain time. Your speech in Parliament a few minutes ago was filled with optimism grounded in a deep faith in people, in the character of the citizens we serve, and their ability to step up and meet the challenges before us. Like we have for many years, we will continue to work shoulder to shoulder as allies and friends to build a better future for Canadians and Americans alike. It is always a pleasure to stand beside you. It is always a pleasure to work with you. Right now, it's a pleasure to hand it over to you.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Prime Minister. And I can't think of a challenge we haven't met together when we sought to do it together. Excuse me. Before I speak of the progress of this trip, I was informed by my national security team on the way over here that about an attack in Syria yesterday, and Iranian-backed militant groups used an unmanned aerial vehicle to strike one of our facilities, causing several American casualties. One of our citizens tragically died in that attack. And on the flight up yesterday, I spoke to our national security team and ordered an immediate response. Last night, U.S. military forces carried out a series of airstrikes in Syria, targeting those responsible for attacking our personnel. My heart and deepest condolences go out to the family of the American we lost and wish a speedy recovery for those who were wounded. But I'm also grateful for the professionalism of our service members who so ably carried out this response. And to make no mistake, the United States does not emphasize seek conflict with Iran, but be prepared for us to act forcefully, protect our people. That's exactly what happened last night. We're going to continue to keep up our efforts to counter terrorist threats in the region in partnerships with Canada and other members of the coalition to defeat ISIS. Now, let me get to today's business. It's wonderful to be back in Canada. I'm honored I had a chance to address Parliament this afternoon. They were very patient, and I appreciate it. And, you know, a little over 75 years ago, in his own address to Parliament, President Truman said, "No two nations are called upon to make great contributions to the world's rehabilitation." And, well, we are making great contributions to the world's rehabilitation, in my view. Today, as we stand at, as I said today, an inflection point in history, our nations are once again called upon to lead. And together, I believe we're answering the call. First, we've unleashed an economic potential of our people and our partnership that generates more than $2.5 billion in trade every single day. Secondly, we're transforming our hemisphere into a clean energy powerhouse, including extending the Inflation Reduction Act tax credits to electric vehicles assembled in Canada. And as we discussed over the last 2 days, we're also strengthening our supply chains for critical minerals and semiconductors that power our everyday lives. And today, we're making a $50 million available through the Defense Production Act to incentivize more U.S. and Canadian companies to invest in packaging of these semiconductors and printed circuit boards. I also want to emphasize what I said earlier in Parliament, that Canada and the United States always will have each other's backs. And we see this through NORAD as we work to modernize the world's only, and emphasize it again, the only binational military command. There's none other in the world. And we see it through NATO, where we're ensuring that we can meet any threat. And over the last year, we've seen it through our strong and unified support for the brave people of Ukraine, to which the Prime Minister spoke so masterfully today in Parliament, and stepping up to provide critical humanitarian aid as well as security assistance, and for Canada's embrace of Ukrainian refugees. And as we head into the second year of Russia's brutal invasion, our unity is not going to break. We're going to keep the pressure on Putin through our historic sanctions and tariffs, and we're going to continue to provide Ukraine with training, equipment, humanitarian assistance it needs, and to defend itself against Russian aggression. And finally, as we deepen the global cooperation, we're also exploring our regional collaboration. As we discussed today, we're doubling down on our work to disrupt synthetic drugs, which have claimed too many American and Canadian lives. By bolstering our work together in the North American Drug Dialogue with Mexico, and building on a new global coalition against synthetic opioids, we're working to get these killer drugs like fentanyl out of our communities. And together, under the Los Angeles Declaration on Migration and Protection, and the Prime Minister has already spoken to, we're also making good on our commitment to address the historic levels of migration in our hemisphere. Since we created dedicated pathways in the United States, the number of migrants arriving on our southern border has dropped precipitously. And I commend Canada for stepping up with a similar program, opening new legal pathways for up to 15,000 migrants to come to Canada from countries in the Western Hemisphere. Mr. Prime Minister, Canada and the United States has always been partners in progress. And today, we're once again called to lead. I know that the United States can count on Canada to be our friend, doing the hard work, doing the historic work, doing the work that matters, and doing it together. I truly believe we're going to make some great contributions, and I am optimistic about the future. And that's not hyperbole. I'm optimistic. I really am. We're going to make a better future for the people of Canada, the American people, and in consequence for the whole hemisphere and around the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. Prime Minister, we'll be taking 2 questions from the American delegation, 2 questions from the Canadian delegation. 1 question, 1 follow-up. Mr. President, first question over to you.
All right. I guess the first person I'm calling on is Josh. Josh.
Thank you, Mr. President. 2 questions, 1 for each of you. Mr. President, you talked today about the security and economic partnership with Canada. President Xi just went to Russia and expanded China's economic commitment with that country. Why do you think many leading countries are choosing to form competing partnerships, and what does that mean for the world? Prime Minister Trudeau.
Oh, sorry.
Canada recently banned TikTok on government devices. Knowing what you know, are you comfortable with the idea of your children or family members using TikTok? Thank you.
I've responded to the question first. Well, first of all, look, in 10 years, Russia and China have had 40 meetings. 40 meetings. And I disagree with the basic premise of your question. We have significantly expanded our alliances. I haven't seen that happen with China and or Russia or anybody else in the world. We're in a situation in the United States where NATO is stronger. We're all together. The G7, the Quad, the ASEAN, Japan and Korea. I have, my staff pointed out to me, I have now met with 80% of the world leaders just since I've been president. We're the ones expanding the alliances. The opposition's not. Name for me where that's going. And tell me what I don't mean to literally that, but rhetorically. Tell me how, in fact, you see a circumstance where China has made some significant commitment to Russia. And what commitment can they make? Economically. Pardon me?
Their trade has increased, sir.
Yeah, their trade has increased compared to what? Look, I don't take China lightly. I don't take Russia lightly. But I think we vastly exaggerate. I've been hearing now for the past 3 months about China is going to provide significant weapons to Russia, and they're going to, well, I've been talking about that. They haven't yet. Doesn't mean they won't, but they haven't yet. And if anything's happened, the West has coalesced significantly more. How about the Quad? How about Japan and the United States and South Korea? How about what we've done in terms of AUKUS? How about so I just want to put it in perspective. I don't take it lightly what China, and Russia are doing. And it could get significantly worse. But let's put it in perspective. We are uniting coalitions. We, the United States and Canada.
On TikTok, we made a similar decision to the American government and others when we said that we do not feel that the security profile is safe for government-issued phones. There are concerns around privacy and security, and that is why we have banned TikTok from government-issued phones. But your question, Josh, was about what I do as a parent of teenagers and my kids on social media. And on that, I am obviously concerned with their privacy and their security, which is why I'm glad that on their phones that happen to be issued by the government, they no longer access TikTok. That was a big frustration for them. Really? This applies to us too, Dad? Yes, I just did that. But I think as parents, we are understanding, particularly of teenagers, just how much of our kids' lives are lived online and how much they are impacted not just by influence the way their friends are and peer pressure that all of us went through as teenagers, but a degree of misinformation, disinformation, and malicious activity that is allowed for by incredible advances in technology that we are benefiting from in so many different ways. As governments, we have to make sure we're doing what we can to keep people safe in the public square, making sure we're pushing back against hate speech and incitations to violence online, and we're carefully calibrating legislation to do that. As a parent, I spend a lot of time talking to my kids about what's online and how they should try and go outside and play a little more sports and not get so wrapped up in their phones. And we're going to continue to do that. Our concerns around TikTok are around security and access to information that the Chinese government could have to government phones. It's just a personal side benefit that my kids can't use TikTok anymore that I recommend everyone to use my encouragement to try and do.
Merci. On va prendre maintenant la question canadienne. Christian Noël de Radio-Canada.
We'll now go to a Canadian question. Christian Noël.
Monsieur Trudeau, bonjour.
Good afternoon, Mr. President. Good afternoon, Mr. Prime Minister. I'd like to ask a question about Roxham Road. The agreement has been ready for a year. Why did you wait so long? And for the 15,000 migrants that Canada will welcome, why so few? What have we offered to the U.S. in exchange? Thank you, Christian. We've known for a long time, theoretically, what modernization needed to be made to the Roxham Road, to the agreement. We couldn't simply shut down Roxham Road and hope that everything would resolve itself, because we would have had problems. The border is very long. People would have looked for other places to cross. And so that's why we chose to modernize the Safe Third Country Agreement so that someone who attempts to cross between official crossings will be subject to the principle, the same principle as someone who should seek asylum in the first safe country they arrive at. Now, for people who are coming from the U.S., that is where they should be asylum seekers. Using this means of uniformly applying the agreement, which we knew theoretically would be the solution, but it takes complex processes to manage the border. It took months before we could move forward with the announcement. But by doing so, we protected the integrity of the system, and we're also continuing to live up to our obligations with respect to asylum seekers. At the same time, we continue to be open to regular migrants, and we will increase the number of asylum seekers who we accept from the hemisphere, the Western Hemisphere, in order to compensate for closing these irregular crossings. Thank you.
Mr. President, this question is for you, but Monsieur Trudeau, sentez-vous bien libre de répondre aussi?
Please feel free, Mr. Trudeau, to answer as well.
Monsieur le Président, êtes-vous déçu que le Canada...
Are you disappointed that Canada is not part or hasn't taken a bigger role in the multilateral forces in Haiti? And what would you like Canada to do more in addition to the $100 million announced today?
Look, this is a very, very difficult circumstance. The idea of how do we deal with what's going on in Haiti, where gangs have essentially taken the place of the government, in effect. They rule the roost, as the saying goes. And so I think that what the Prime Minister has spoken about makes a lot of sense. The biggest thing we could do, and it's going to take time, is to increase the prospect of the police departments in Haiti having the capacity to deal with the problems they're faced. And that is going to take a little bit of time. We also are looking at whether or not the international community through the United Nations could play a larger role in this event, in this circumstance. But there is no question that there is a real, genuine concern, because there are several million people in Haiti, and the diaspora could cause some real, how can I say it, confusion in the Western Hemisphere. And so, but I think that what the Prime Minister is suggesting, and we are as well going to be contributing, to see if we can both increase the efficiency and capacity of the training and the methods used by the police department, as well as seeing if we can engage other people in the hemisphere, which we've been talking to, and they're prepared to do some. So it's a work in progress.
Depuis 30 ans.
For 30 years, Western countries have been involved in Haiti to try to stabilize the country, to try to help the Pearl of the Antilles, and the situation is atrocious. It's affecting the security of the people of Haiti. We must take action. And we must keep the Haitian people in the approach that we build for security. And that's why the approach that we are working on with the U.S. involves strengthening the capacity of the Haitian National Police, bringing more peace and security and stability. This won't happen tomorrow. It will, of course, be a long process, but we will be there to support the capacity of the police in Haiti, the national police. At the same time, part of the insecurity and instability in Haiti is because of the Haitian elite, who have for too long benefited from the misery of the Haitian people. They work for their own political gain, their own personal gain, and this has prevented the country from recovering, and that's why we're proceeding with sanctions. We will continue to bring pressure to bear on the elite, the political class in Haiti, to hold them accountable for the distress facing the Haitian people, but to hold them accountable for ensuring their well-being. We're going to continue to work together. We fully understand how important this task is.
Mr. President, over to you.
Can I follow up with one point on Haiti? And that is that any decision about military force, which was often raised, we think would have to be done in consultation with the United Nations and with the Haitian government. And so that is not off the table, but that is not in play at the moment. I'm sorry.
Over to you for the question, Mr. President.
Jordan, you have a question?
Thank you, Mr. President. Some on Wall Street have expressed frustration that it's unclear what more your administration is willing to do to resolve the banking crisis. The markets have remained in turmoil. So how confident are you that the problem is contained? And if it spreads, what measures, such as guaranteeing more deposits, are you willing or not willing to take?
First of all, have you ever known Wall Street not in consternation? Number one. Look, I think we've done a pretty damn good job. People's savings are secure, and even those beyond the $250,000, the FDIC is guaranteeing them that the American taxpayer is not going to have to pay a penny. The banks are in pretty good shape. What's going on in Europe isn't a direct consequence of what's happening in the United States. And what we would do is, if we find that there's more instability than appears, we'd be in a position to have the FDIC use the power it has to guarantee those loans above 250, like they did already. And so I think it's going to take a little while for things to just calm down. But I don't see anything that's on the horizon that's about to explode. But I do understand there's an unease about this. And these mid-sized banks have to be able to survive, and I think they'll be able to do that.
And Mr. Prime Minister, the U.S. has included Canada in electric vehicle subsidies, as you've discussed, that were included in the Inflation Reduction Act But the IRA also raises some competitiveness concerns and challenges for Canada. President Biden supports Buy American provisions very strongly, and that has historically led to some trade tensions. So are you planning to announce anything in your budget to keep up, so to speak, and are you asking the U.S. government for exceptions to the Buy American provisions in other areas?
First of all, there's nothing new about Canada having to make sure that we remain competitive with the United States as a place for investment. That's something that we have long known as a friendly competition between us that has led to tremendous growth and benefits in both of our countries. Right now, we're in a time where Joe talked about it as an inflection point. I think that's exactly right. We can feel the global economy shifting in very real ways towards lower carbon emission technologies, cleaner tech, great jobs in the natural resource and manufacturing industries that are going to be increased on our continent after years of outsourcing and offshoring. There is a real opportunity for both of us, and the IRA, which is bringing in massive investments and massive opportunities for American workers and companies, is also going to have strong impacts on supply chains and producers and employees in Canada. Yes, we're going to have to make sure we're staying competitive and targeting the areas where we think we can best compete, and we'll have more to say about that in our budget next week. But let us take a moment to step back and see that North America, Canada and the United States in particular, are incredibly well positioned to be the purveyors of solutions and economic growth that the net zero economy around the world will need over the coming decades. The innovation, the know-how, the ability of us to make big things together leave us in a time of global uncertainty extremely certain that we are well placed for the future. Whether it's investments that have seen Canada go from 5th or 6th in the world in terms of battery supply chains to now 2nd in the world in terms of battery supply chains. Whether it's continuing our leadership on the cleanest aluminum in the world, moving towards cleaner steel and zero-emission steel. Whether it's moving forward on critical minerals that the world is understanding they can no longer rely on places like China or Russia for, that they can rely on Canada to be not just a purveyor of ores, but of finished materials that will be built in environmentally responsible, union or good middle-class jobs, wages, strong communities, and the kind of leadership that the world is increasingly looking for. There's long been a bit of a weakness, I think, to our argument that we've made over the past decades as Western democracies that says that our model is the best one. It leads to the most prosperity. But so much of our model, we sort of turned our back to the fact that it relied on cheap imports of goods or resources from parts of the world that didn't share our values and weren't responsible on the environment or on human rights or on labor standards. And what we're doing right now is showing that we can and will build resilient supply chains between us and with friends around the world that adhere every step of the way to the values that we live by, that make sure that there are good jobs for workers in communities, urban and rural, right across our continent. There are good careers for kids long into the future, not in spite of a changing world, but because of that changing world and how well we are positioned to see the future and meet the future. That's why it's so exciting to be able to work alongside Joe in these challenging times, where we know we are better positioned than just about anyone else. And those friends of ours who share our values and our democracies around the world will benefit from the strength and the relations they have with us, and those who choose to continue to turn their backs on the environment, and on human rights, on the values of freedom and dignity for all, will increasingly not be able to benefit from the growth that our societies, that our communities are creating every single day.
And by the way, we each have what the other needs. We each have what the other needs. The idea that somehow Canada is somehow put at a disadvantage because we're going to probably be investing billions of dollars in their ability to package what is coming out of the semiconductor area. I don't get it. How does that in any way do anything other than hire and bring billions of dollars into Canada? I also don't understand how, when we talk about it, we greatly need Canada in terms of the minerals that are needed. Well, you guys, we don't have the minerals to mine. You can mine them. You don't want to produce, turn them into product. We do. I mean, I'm a little confused, at least thus far, on why this is a disadvantage for Canada and the United States. I think we each have what the other needs. And let me conclude by saying, when I started talking about we're going to build our economies from the middle out and the bottom up, not the top down, I was being literal. Because what happened is, if you think about it, in Democrat and Republican administrations beginning over 30 years ago or more in the United States, corporate America decided that what they're going to do is they're going to export jobs and import product because there's cheaper labor. Well, guess what? Now we are making sure they import jobs here, and we export product. Canada's doing the same thing. So this is a real shift in the world economy in terms of what we're prepared to do. And I'll be darned if I'm going to stick in a situation where, as long as I'm president, where we have to rely on a supply chain in the other end of the world that is affected by politics, pandemics, or anything else. We're not hurting anyone in terms of having access to the start of the supply chain. It's available. But again, I predict to you, you're going to see, after we're both out of office, both China out of the game in terms of many of the product they're producing, and the United States and Canada pretty solid, economically situated for the future in terms of also bringing back manufacturing jobs.
Merci.
Sorry. And they're telling me I'm talking too long because we got to go to dinner.
Thank you. On va prendre maintenant dernière question.
We'll take one last question.
My first question is for the Prime Minister, but Mr. President, feel free to weigh in before my follow-up. Prime Minister, we know that you've appointed a special rapporteur, but with what we've learned about Han Dong's communication with the Chinese Consular General, do you believe he advocated for the delayed release of the two Michaels?
First of all, Han gave a strong speech in the House that I recommend people listen to, and we fully accept that he is stepping away from the Liberal caucus in order to vigorously contest these allegations. But I do want to take a step back and point out that foreign interference by authoritarian governments like China, Russia, Iran, and others is a very real challenge to our democracies and is absolutely unacceptable. It's why over the past number of years, the President and I have had many conversations about this, and indeed will continue to work together with our democratic allies around the world to keep our institutions and our democracies safe from foreign interference. In 2018, when Canada hosted the G7 in Charlevoix, we actually created the G7 Rapid Response Mechanism to protect our democracies in cases of interference. And we will continue to work together to make sure we're doing everything necessary to protect our democracies, which by definition are more open and therefore more vulnerable to foreign actors trying to weigh in our politics, in our business, in our research institutions, and particularly impact on citizens themselves, which is why over the past years Canada, like our allies around the world, has given itself new, rigorous tools to counter foreign interference. And with the work that our expert rapporteur will do, with the work that our National Security Committee of Parliamentarians will be doing, and other institutions, we will continue to do everything necessary to keep Canadians safe.
Nothing to add.
Thank you. And Mr. President, when you took office, you canceled the Keystone XL pipeline. This week, your government delayed the environmental assessment to reroute Enbridge Line 5, and at the same time, you're approving oil drilling in Alaska. So what's your response to people who say it's hypocritical to stymie Canadian energy projects while allowing your own?
First of all, I don't think it is, but I'll be very brief. The difficult decision was on what we do with the Willow project in Alaska. And my strong inclination was to disapprove of it across the board. But the advice I got from counsel was that if that were the case, I may very well lose in court and lose that case in court to the oil company, and then not be able to do what I really want to do beyond that, and that is conserve significant amounts of Alaskan sea and land forever. I was able to see to it that we literally able to conserve millions of acres, not a few, millions of acres of sea and land forever, so it cannot be used in the future. I am banking on, we'll find out, that the oil company is going to say that's not going to be challenged, and they're going to go with 3 sites. And the energy that is going to be produced there, estimated, would account to 1% of the total production of oil in the world. And so I thought it was the better gamble and a hell of a trade-off to have the Arctic Ocean, the Bering Sea, and so many other places off limits forever now. I think we put more land in conservation than any administration since Teddy Roosevelt. I'm not positive of that, but I think that's true.
Thank you all. This is what concludes today's press conference. C'est ce qui met fin à la conférence de presse d'aujourd'hui.
Thank you.